So here we go, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Meet the Oppo, the series where I get the lowdown on Town's next opponent, which of course is Burton Albion at Portman Road in League One. I'm joined by Dave Fletcher once again to get all things Burton Albion. Dave, thanks for joining me. How's things since we last spoke? It's been a while and there's been a lot of change at Burton. How's things?
Hi, Ross. Yeah, a lot of change, absolutely. Yeah, when Ipswich came to the Pirelli Stadium in August, that was probably Burton's best performance at the time. They still lost, and they lost 8 or 7 of their first 8 matches. It was just dreadful, absolutely dreadful. Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank left after a defeat at Oxford United. We all know what's happened to Oxford United since then. And Dino Maamria took over, and it wasn't plain sailing to start with either. He was working with the same players. He was Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank's assistant, which a lot of people were thinking, I'm not so sure this is going to work. How is this going to work? But he's subtly distanced himself from the previous manager. We'll perhaps get into that when we talk about Victor Adebayo leaving, because he wants to be his own man, and he now has pretty much his own team. A lot of the players who were playing under Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank from the Northwest were brought in by Dino Maamria, the likes of Tom Hamer with his long throw and Johnny Smith and 1 or 2 others. So they were people known to Dino Maamria. And since Boxing Day, really, when they cruised past Lincoln City 3-0 at home with probably the best performance that we'd seen all season, it's been pretty good.
Yeah, it has been. Yeah, 18th in League One. When I look at the table, I always feel sadly say, I think Burton's going to be down there. But now out of the relegation zone, a great, as you said, since Boxing Day, and definitely the last few months, 4 wins in the last 6 games. What sort of change? Some great signings in January. I'm looking at some of the signings, Charlie Kirk and the players like that who are good players at this level. What is the current mood since the last few months?
Well, the mood is, as you might expect, very good at the moment. The crowd are right behind the team and right behind Dino Maamria now, largely as a result, I would say, of what the business that he did in January. He was fortunate in a way in that he won 2 games before the January transfer window opened. That win against Lincoln that I mentioned. Then they went down to Forest Green in one of the worst games of football I think I've ever seen. Although I did see a worse one last night at Prenton Park, but that was for pleasure. But they won both of them before the transfer window opened, and they got out of the bottom 4 before the transfer window opened. And I don't think that helped in attracting players, because players are not stupid and they'll know that Burton were a struggling side. But it just gave everybody a little bit of hope that if he could strengthen after that, then everything would be fine. And they went to Morecambe on New Year's Day, all full of confidence after back-to-back wins, and everything was terrific. And Morecambe beat them 5-0. In an appalling display, including a comedy offside, of course, but it was 4-0 at the time that the offside came. And then they came back to the Pirelli Stadium and lost 4-0 at home to Shrewsbury, who scored after 19 seconds. It was just horrible. And at that point, I thought, well, they're down. That was an extraordinary 2 wins in 2, and they can't possibly come back from that. But as you say, 4 wins from the last 6, Oxford, Fleetwood and Exeter in successive games. First time they've done that since the beginning of last season, won 3 in a row, which tells you the kind of problems that they've had stringing results together. And the players that they brought in have been successful, very successful indeed. I mean, they brought Quevin Castro in. I think he featured against Ipswich. He might not have come off the bench, but he was certainly in the matchday squad. He got sent back before the summer transfer window closed. That's how disappointing his time at Burton had been. I mean, it's remarkable, really. But the ones who've come in since, and they're reasonably high class. I was going to say very high class. They're reasonably high class players. They're good quality players. You already mentioned Charlie Kirk. He hasn't even started yet, but he's got 2 goals. He's come off the bench and scored the winner at Fleetwood. He came off the bench and got another one as well. So he may well be the solution to the Ghassan Ahadme problem, although I think that Josh Walker, who was signed from Dagenham and Redbridge on a permanent, might have something to say about that. Dale Taylor is a 19-year-old Northern Ireland international, already played for the Northern Ireland senior side, but has yet to play for Forest and didn't play for Linfield before Forest signed him. he looks really good. He's a real hard worker. Jasper Moon arrived from Barnsley on loan. I think they want to make that permanent if they possibly can in the summer. He arrived and was given dog's abuse on social media by Barnsley fans who said, well, you'll never be a footballer, you're never going to make it. And he's been absolutely superb, absolutely superb. In a three-man defence, usually with John Brayford and Sam Hughes, although Sam Lavelle made his debut last weekend. So they've got options all over the pitch now. That's the other thing. They didn't really have options. Zach Ashworth, who didn't play last weekend, has been playing as a left wing-back. West Bromwich Albion youngster. Real quality player. They've lost a couple, of course. They lost Sam Winnell and Terry Taylor from the current squad for the rest of the season with ankle injuries, and that's a blow. Mark Helm, who signed permanently from Burnley, who's the sort of creative midfielder, has missed the last couple of matches as well. Oh, he came on as a sub late on last weekend, so he may well be ready to start, which changes the dynamic. They've actually got somebody who can create something. There was a lot of people who could stop the opposition from playing. Desi Oshilaja is one of my favourite players, is the prime example of a stopper. Not many people get past him. But to lose Winnell and Terry Taylor was bad. And the transfer window wasn't all plain sailing, sadly. In the last three transfer windows, they've lost Daniel Jebison back to Sheffield United and Kane Hemmings to Tranmere, the two main strikers. That was in January 2022. Gassan obviously went to Ipswich last summer, and Victor Adebayo, who stepped up and replaced him manfully and scored 13 goals before January, eventually departed for £500,000 to Bolton Wanderers, who've now got more strikers than they know what to do with. Which is very Bolton-like, of course, and I say that as somebody who can see the ground from my bedroom window here. So, it's been interesting. It's been very interesting indeed. And I hadn't even mentioned Craig McGilvray, who arrived from Charlton, the goalkeeper. Didn't play the first game because they also signed Jordan Amisa from Sheffield United on loan. They've got 7 loan players. Of course, you can only put 5 in a match day squad. So Maamria says everybody's on board with that and they knew what was happening, and he basically had to make these signings, and if you couldn't make them permanent, then get the players in and then worry about the 5 from 7 afterwards. But it meant that the first game that Ghassan Ahadme was there for was Fleetwood, I think, wasn't in the match day squad, and everybody was sort of scratching their head thinking, hang on a minute, this is a guy who started the season really well, was building into a bit of form. Yes, he hasn't played much, I understand that. But surely he's going to walk straight into this Burton side. And he didn't. He made his first appearance at Bristol Rovers 10 days or so ago when he came off the bench, and then he started the last game and looked sharp. To be fair to him, he does look sharp. Hasn't got a goal in either of those 2 games, but the goals will come. I haven't got any problem with that. He was behind Josh Walker and Dale Taylor at the time. Taylor obviously stole a march because he scored a goal on his debut, which is always a good thing to do, isn't it? Always a good thing to do. Josh Walker hasn't scored yet either, but he will. He looks a really, really promising player. More for the long term, possibly, but he's 25, 26 now. So, if he's not going to make it now, he never will. And he seems to be taking his chance. So, yeah, things are looking up. Certainly, the squad is much, much better. He's got his, I want 20 players and 2 goalkeepers, and that's all I want. There are still players there. Cameron Borthwick-Jackson's still there, but nowhere near the first team squad. Michael Mansian, the same, nowhere near the first team squad. So there are 2 or 3. Ben Garrett was an interesting one, the goalkeeper, who was first choice earlier on in the season. I know Viliami Sinisalo played against Ipswich. And Ben was basically told you can find another club. But of course, having Jordan Amisa on the bench as a lone player is a bit of a waste. So he's now been shunted sideways, and Ben Garrett was back on the bench at the weekend, and I expect that to continue, certainly, because you can't really afford to have a lone goalkeeper on the bench, I don't think, when you've got so many other loans as well that you can't squeeze into your match day squad.
Definitely, mate. Yeah, you covered a lot there. I had a few other questions, but now they've been answered. So thanks so much for that. I was going to mention Ghassan, but yeah, I'm sure he'll get fully up to speed again with Burton, and hopefully he'll score you the goals, and you guys can stay up. Let's look at the last 11 against Accrington then. You mentioned a lot of names there. Any changes, do you reckon? Of course, Ghassan won't be playing. He won't feature. I'm sure he may come up and see his teammates at town and be there for Burton as well, but he won't play. But any other changes in that lineup? And yeah, what sort of style of play is Dino bringing? Is he bringing something different to Jimmy, or has he got his own little sparks there?
It is different. I expect there will be a couple of changes. It's very rare that Burton go with the same team in successive games. I think it's quite rare for any team these days, isn't it? It very much is a squad game. Sam Lavelle made his debut in a back three with Sam Hughes and Jasper Moon, with John Brayford moving to right wing back and Tom Hamer to left wing back. Now he's played left back a few times, Tom Hamer, but he's a right back or a right wing back. He's right footed. And I think that if Zach Ashworth is available, it might mean Sam Lavelle drops out again to make way for him. And obviously, as you say, Gassan won't be playing. So I would imagine it will be a toss-up between Josh Walker and Charlie Kirk to come in up front as the main striker. I mean, they may fiddle around a bit and put Dale Taylor as the lone striker with people supporting him, but it'll the 2-1 at the end of that 3-4-2-1 will change a little bit. Bobby Cam was interesting. He was a free agent at the end of the summer transfer window. Had a good junior career at Leeds, and I spoke to a colleague up there who said if he can stay fit, he's going to be a proper player. And of course, he got injured over Christmas and is making his way back. That was his first appearance, but straight back into the side. I know that Dino Maamria likes him, but Mark Helm, if fit, has to be squeezed into that side as well somewhere. And you would think that having just come back from injury, Bobby Campbell might be the one to miss out if Helm's fit. So there'll be 2 or 3 changes I would expect, but the spine of the team, which has done well in recent weeks, McGilvray, Hughes, Moon, Brayford, Hamer, Osher Taylor himself, Dale Taylor, they'll all be in the side. I don't think there's much doubt about that.
Okay, then. You mentioned, Tom Hamer. He's got that long throw. He's got 8 assists this season. Should we expect that? And what sort of football will Burton bring? Because they'll be coming to Portman Road. Going to be a big crowd. The last few games were played against teams at the bottom of the table, or in the mid half of the table. There's been some big wins, a lot of goals. But Burton, they don't concede too many. But there's a few goals here and there. There's, different results here and there. A goalless draw against Accrington last time out. But as you said, the 5-0 defeat against Morecambe, which was a couple of months ago now, but that was a big defeat. But yeah, what game should we expect?
Well, it was strange because in that game against Morecambe, he played the highest line I've ever seen a football team play. Basically, the back 4 or back 3 were on the halfway line the entire match, and Morecambe kept popping the ball over the top, and it was an absolute shambles. It really was a shambles. So they've been more pragmatic in recent games. They've only conceded a couple of goals in the last 4 matches. Conceded 2 to Fleetwood as well before that. So they haven't been leaking the goals that they did in those defeats to Morecambe and Shrewsbury when they were playing this high line. It just didn't work. I think you have to have a certain kind of player. You have to have a lot of pace for a start, don't you? And as good a centre-back as Sam Hughes is and as good a centre-back as John Brayford is, neither of them are blessed with pace. So, Jasper Moons does a lot of covering for them. He's usually the last man back as well. And you talk about Tom Hamer's long throws, and it's a sort of 50-50 now, because he'll go to take the long throw and throw it back to Jasper Moon, he'll cross it in. So they're not as reliant as they were. They were certainly very reliant season before last when they performed the Great Escape to stay up under Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank and Dino Maamria. Everything went into the penalty area, and it was basically a lottery. It was almost like going to the casino. The ball would go in and you'd hope that it landed on red. And somebody would force it home. Well, they're better than that now. They've got some good footballers. Desjosha Larger has changed from being this defensive midfielder, which he still is, but he'll pop up on the left wing and pop up on the right wing, and you think, well, you have to sort of double take. Is that really Deji? And it is, and he's been terrific under Dino Maamria, and they do play a bit more football. They've got a bit more guile about them. But defensively, they're much more solid. And I think McGilvray has given the players in front of him a bit more confidence as well. I mean, Brayford has never lacked confidence, I don't think. Sam Hughes, he missed the games against Morecambe and Shrewsbury, I believe, which tells you a lot about the importance of Sam Hughes, who's played more games this season than he's ever played in his career, in his professional career. He played a lot for Chester as a youngster, but obviously didn't play hardly anything for Leicester City and picked up quite a bad injury last season, which finished him off. but yeah, McGilvray has given them a lot of confidence, and when you've got somebody like Brayford in your defence, he's now started 501 Football League matches. His 500th was at Bristol Rovers 10 days ago, which is not a bad number to be reaching. When you've got him in your side, there's always going to be a certain amount of organisation. He knows what's happening. He's been there. He's done it all at just about every level. So but as I say, they'll play a bit more football than perhaps people will expect. I mean, they'll try and keep it tight. I don't think there's any question that the last thing they want is to concede inside the first 5 minutes, because then you really have got to come out and take the odd risk here and there. So I think they'll try and keep it tight. I don't think it'll be quite. It might be, actually. Portsmouth away was the last time when they played a team who you thought, well, they're going to struggle here. And they defended manfully. They did create a couple of chances. In fact, they probably had the best chance of the entire game before Portsmouth eventually scored late on through Joe Powell, who's just coming back, hadn't played much since November. So you could sort of forgive him. A sharp Joe Powell probably would have scored. He just hit the goalkeeper's foot with his shot. But yeah, I think they'll give it a go. I mean, I lost Dino Maamria before the game, obviously, and he'll say, we've come here to win. Well, yeah, okay. A point might not be a bad thing at this stage of the season.
Yeah, definitely. Of course, the last time, this was back in February last year, and Town scored in 42 seconds. So I'm sure Burton want to improve on that. Lots changed in terms of squad, different manager. How are you feeling then, Dave, going into this one down at Portman Road? Of course, Town needing to win these games now if they want to get themselves still in that race for the top two. But as you said, Burton coming here, not going to lay down. They want to get something out of it.
That's the other thing, isn't it? Of course, it's not like going somewhere where there'll be a huge crowd in again. I'm certain that there always seems to be a big crowd whenever we go to Portman Road, or when we have over the last year or two. And Ipswich need the points, because you look at the top of the table, and most teams are continuing to win, aren't they? So it's imperative. Our neighbours, Derby County, picked up 1 point from 4, and it was absolute panic stations amongst the supporters. We're not going to even. We were talking about the top 2. We're not even going to make the top 6, but then they win against Cheltenham, and everybody calms right down because Bolton are losing at Portsmouth and things like that. And there's going to be a lot of twists and turns, I think, at both ends of the table. You want to try and minimise the number of twists and turns there are, don't you, really? Ipswich will clearly go into this game as favourites, given their position in the table, given the fact that they're at home. But as I say, I don't travel with the same trepidation that I did in August and September and October. I mean, the worst trip of the season for me, because fortunately I missed Plymouth due to my cricket commitments, is Exeter. And I travelled down there on the Friday thinking, well, what is the point? And they won 2-0. That was Dino Maamria's and their first win of the season. And since then, you've thought, perhaps they are going to be okay. And I genuinely believe that there are 4 worse teams in the division than Burton Albion. I've seen it with my own eyes. I don't care how much possession Milton Keynes Dons have. They don't do anything with it. I know they've got a draw in midweek, but they just don't do anything with it. 2 centre-backs have got the highest rankings in the completed and accurate passes table. Well, good for them. It's just horrible to watch. Joey Barton said something about Burton before the Bristol Rovers game, saying that they're playing a certain way, but would you pay to watch them? Well, I think people have started to pay to watch them again now. I wouldn't pay to watch MK. I wouldn't pay to watch Bristol Rovers, if I'm entirely honest with you either. But I would pay to watch Burton Albion.
Okay, then we'll look forward to it then. Sadly, actually, I'm not going to be at the game. It was a rare game for me to miss. But Dave, any other business, any other notes you want to mention for Burton, for Town fans to get to know? What's Dino like then on the touchline? Now he's the number 1. He's not the number 2 of the shadow, Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank. What's he going to be like?
He's been booked twice in the last 3 or 4 matches.
Oh,
yeah, often gets spoken to by the referee. Him and Chris Beardsley, who's his first team coach, like most management teams, they're always in the 4th official's ear. He's very, very animated when it's tight. He really is animated. So I think people will enjoy that. They'll enjoy screaming at him and telling him to sit down. I've no doubt. But no, he's been great with us. And he's had this kind of success elsewhere, but at a lower level when he helped save Oldham a couple of seasons ago, Northwich Victoria before that in the National League when he went there and they were down. So he's got form, and if he keeps them up, the big test for him obviously is going to be the business he does in the summer and going forward. But the key, obviously, is to stay up. And having watched a game of League Two football in midweek for pleasure and paid 22 quid for the privilege, wow. I don't want to watch League Two football for 46 games next season, because the difference in standard is alarming. And Burton have got to stay in League One.
Okay, then we shall see what happens then. Well, Dave, thanks for joining me. Thanks everyone for watching. As always, if you go into the game, enjoy it. If you're not, follow the game with us here at Kings of Anglia, East Anglian Daily Times. Thanks again for watching. Bye-bye for now.